Hello and welcome to part 2 of my new video series where I'm going to be speaking very concisely and honestly and vulnerably about all of the things that concern me and sharing a bit of my journey, my knowledge, my story to do with gay culture. So this is part 2 of gay culture, the one-way ticket to nowhere, the one-way ticket to absolute ruin. So I do want to remind you that this series of videos that I'm going to be uploading or podcasts that I'm going to be uploading might be kind of all over the shop because there is just so much to unpack. And there's just no way I could cover all of the things that I want to share and I've experienced from this culture just from, doing 2 videos. So I am going to be kind of breaking it up a little bit. So maybe consider these 2 parts kind of like dipping your toe into the water with me about this. I hope that makes sense. Firstly, I want to say, look, it does take bravery to speak as freely as this as well. I'm aware that not many people want to hear this. I'm aware that a lot of people are already living in, I would say probably most gay men are living in some level of, cognitive dissonance, which if you don't know what cognitive dissonance is, it's a distortion of reality that we make up to normalize something that isn't real, or we normalize something that changing something from one thing to another to fit a narrative that we want, So I don't know how far to be honest with you, I don't know whether, whether these videos might be taken down. Like I've mentioned before, some of my videos have been. It seems that the YouTube police are out in force. And if you have an opinion that is different to the narrative that we're pushed and fed, then we get removed. So that being said, if you haven't watched part 1, please go back and watch part 2. And also just bear with me if you DM me as well. I am quite antisocial, and I really try to filter and limit a lot of the incoming messages that I get. So I have to, I also get a lot of hatred, a lot of hateful comments, and that's totally fine. I'm in a public domain, so I understand. All right. So that being said, I'm going to get on with this chat, and I really just want to get to the point of saying that gay culture. By the way, these videos are about gay men. I'm not talking about lesbians. I'm not talking about trans. I'm talking about the experience of being a gay man. Okay. So that's when I say gay culture, I'm referring to gay men. So just for the record, so you guys understand that I'm not, and I will get on to my thoughts on all of that later as well at some point in future videos, but and I'll unpack a lot of what I'm saying here in future videos where I can take the time to sit with a cup of tea or something and just go through unpacking and going down that corridor. So gay culture is a one-way ticket to nowhere. It is something that will destroy you in the end, one way or another. It doesn't offer anything of substance. It is purely based on hedonism, infantilizing reality. And I heard a really good one, which I'll share with you, and it made me smile, actually. A donut is a great thing. Who doesn't like a donut? Donuts, yum, yeah? Okay, I'm going to use donut analogy as sex, as a blowjob, all right? So a donut is a great thing, but a lifetime of donuts is a sugary, meaningless hell. All right. So getting a blowjob every now and then is great. Everyone enjoys the infantilization, the thrill, the high, the sex. But if your life is purely based on that, well, my friend, you have not. I mean, yeah, it's a sugary, meaningless hell. It's empty, it's hollow. And living in a time-space reality, without getting too kind of esoteric with you in the podcast, we don't have time to fuck around forever because we age, we get old, we get tired, and we break down. So being able to build real lasting friendships is really important for gay men. And if you're a gay man listening to these videos, you're probably nodding your head and going, yeah, no shit. So why is it that it is so fucking difficult for gay men to make friends with other gay men? And I'm not talking about fair weather friends where we catch up at the club or we kind of text occasionally. I'm talking about friendships that have really got your back. Why is it so fucking difficult, tough as hell, for friends to be formed or friendships to be formed when it comes to gay men? And well, the simple answer to that really is it's so difficult to form long-lasting connections because the premises of gay connection generally starts on the basis of sex. And so if it's based purely on sex, then everything else is ignored or dismissed. So trying to forge something where someone really gets to see you, hear you, understand you, and you don't feel alone, it's really quite, well, it can't be achieved if the lens that the connection is formed through is purely physical. And we know, like I've said before, and I've said this many times and I'll say it again, no one can make it alone. No one can pull this off alone. We need connections. We need communities. We need people that have got the mental abilities to be equipped to handle life. All right, we just do. And so that leads me to what I was saying coming into gay culture is that we come into these ways of being because generally a lot of gay men have been heavily abused by their parents, by their families, by their friends. And so they kind of start off their life in this way where it's just being constantly told that you're horrible, being constantly told that you're in sin, being constantly told that, that you're a lesser person. And of course that's going to happen because you're in a minority. Now, I just want to remind you that there are countries in the world to this day where if you are suspected of being gay or if you are found to be gay, you're locked in a prison or you are murdered. Back in the day, and I'm talking about more Middle Eastern countries, but back in the day, you were horsewhipped. Back in the day, even in my lifetime, when I was a baby and I was born in 1985, I grew up with the fear of stories that if you were gay, you were a pariah, you were thrown away, you were basically put in an orphanage. You were sent away to boarding school or you were paid off by the family to stay away, particularly around country towns where I grew up in a country town myself. And the shame and the pain that brought your family was just unbearable. And it was completely unacceptable to be gay. You were absolutely ostracized. It was something that no one talked about. It was something that was just forbidden. It was in the shadows. And to this day, that still goes on. Of course it does. To this day, a lot of men are murdered. A lot of women are murdered. Well, more with women, it's more, I'll get onto that on another video, I think, but just keeping this on topic. So in terms of coming from a place of, because the thing that I want to make clear in this video, I really want to be very concise about this, which is why I want to take my time explaining it, is that gay psychology is not the same as straight psychology. You can't grow up in an underground minority culture or an underground minority of carrying a secret like that and then expecting to just come out of that unscathed. Okay, so gays don't have or have not had the access to mental health support up until like the last few decades when mental health has started to become a thing. All right, so the damage that this does to the psyche when you're young is very prevalent. And we know that trauma begets trauma. And that's why a lot of gay culture is acting out shame, devaluation on each other. If you can't see that, it would worry me that people can't see that. And that's why I'm actually starting to go in this direction on my channel and talk about these things, because if you can't notice this, where the hell have you been? What do you think's going on here? Okay, so I'm sharing my experience with this, but a lot of gay men are very accepting of abuse because they're not really aware, really, that they came through the lens of experiencing life in constant abuse. And it's their way of dealing with it and understanding it is that the abuser or the abused often becomes the abuser. So other people, a lot of people when it comes to the gay culture have a lot of self-hatred towards themselves and they internalize that, okay? And so, yeah, it's really interesting because it's like coming out of a closet, coming out to your family. A lot of them are abandoned. And that's why I kind of see the cities as an orphanage for gay men. And these kind of, you'll notice a lot of these pockets of suburbs where they congregate or where they tend to locate themselves to live, because same is recognizing same. It's trying to find others like itself to reinforce itself back to itself. And I'm going to get a little heavy here. This video isn't heavy enough, but what happens is when we reinforce behavior back to each other, which is what humans do, if the behavior is toxic or if it is destructive, that behavior is still reinforced anyway, because the need to fit in overrides the narrative of what the behavior is. Okay? So it's very, very common that a lot of gay people try to seek refuge with other people in the community. And this brings me to my story as well, is that we kind of coming in as a young person, you need, like I was looking for someone to kind of guide me and lead me. I was looking to see like, what does it mean to be gay? Like where do I fit in kind of in my youth? And this was something that I really experienced a lot, is that I really wanted to meet other gay men so that I could understand and navigate the world, because I didn't really have any idea about like how it worked. So a lot of young men are looking for older gay men to kind of navigate them and give them that learning kind of thing where they're trying to work out all of the factors that exist within gay culture. And that's where it all kind of can get very, very fucked up, because a lot of these older gay men are actually also quite damaged, and a lot of grooming goes on as well. So when I say grooming, I mean, when you're young, you don't really have an idea about really anything because you haven't had the time to go through life and process all of the experiences and learn who you are and learn about, right or wrong. You're still kind of finding your feet, which means you're very, very vulnerable. And a lot of older gays in the gay community will basically take advantage of that. okay? Grooming is something that's very, very common. So young men with older men is a very common thing. And it's a very damaging thing as well in a lot of ways as well, because first of all, without going into how gay men idolize their own sense of self-perfection, I'll get onto that in another video at some point, I guess. But what happens is, I have to talk about sexual marketplace value to explain this. So SMV, or sexual marketplace value, is an interaction-based thing that we do as humans. So that doesn't matter whether you're gay or straight. Everyone's assessing everyone based on their outside projection, okay? It's actually hardwired into us as humans. We have 3 to 4 seconds when we meet someone to determine whether that person is a threat or is a friend, or is this person safe, or am I attracted to them? All right, so explaining this really bluntly, when you're young, your sexual marketplace value is very, very high because you're desirable, you're easily, like putty, you're easy to manipulate. You don't have the experience, you don't have the mental strength, you haven't gone through, the journey yet. All right, so when you're young, SMV is through the roof. When you're older, you've had time to acquire more monetary gain, money, and you've had time to acquire knowledge. Okay, so these levels are 2 levels that are not on the same playing field. Okay, and if you know where I'm going with this, it's it's pretty obvious, and it works for the straight world too, or the gay world. It doesn't matter. Same with the student-teacher relationship. One is sitting higher than the other. Okay, one has something the other wants. So generally, what will happen is with this kind of grooming thing is that we've got a daddy culture here in the gay world, where a lot of young gay men haven't had a good relationship with their biological fathers, or they haven't had what we call a downpouring experience. If you don't know what a downpouring experience is, it's when a father figure downpours a level of consciousness into their son or into their child that instills a level of structure. And if that structure isn't created, and we know this through criminal psychology and pathology, the Machiavellian scale, we know this in psychology, that a lot of people, a lot of young men particularly, that don't have strong male father figures in their life are more prone to violence, psychopathy, and it gets really, really messy. So just keeping this simple, basically what happens is young men come in and they're basically looking for an older man because they're trying to recreate the dynamic that they lacked in their life with an older man. Okay, so we have this, it's very predatory and it makes me very uncomfortable. It's quite sick where we've got, twinks. And if you don't know what a twink is, a twink, or the archetype or the avatar of a twink, is a little boy that shaves himself down, that's very smooth, very fragile, very skinny, kind of emaciated, very generally kind of very pale looking, that type of archetype. No matter what their ethnicity, it's about a smaller, younger boy. And so this is, in gay culture, this is commodified because it's obviously easy to control. It's a power play dynamic. One gets off on using the other and controlling the other. And so a lot of these young men are seeking a daddy. And of course, they form a relationship with these older men. Generally, there's like sugar babies or a sugar daddy exchange where the daddy might provide gifts or money or time and energy. And then the young boy exchanges his sexual marketplace value or his sex for exchange with the older man. This is all very, very dangerous stuff as well, because eventually the boy grows up. And so the pillars that hold the construct of that dynamic between the two begins to collapse as he grows up. Okay, so it doesn't really last. Yet again, it's all based on fetishizing. Connections are based on fetishizing, quintessentially. Everything's fetishized, as I've mentioned. So daddy culture is very prevalent, and it's there is a very pedophilic, very pedophilic and very predatory vibe to daddy culture. And I've seen it myself. I know how this works. And that's why I personally have no interest in anyone that's under 40. Because I'm an old soul and I have a lot of knowledge in my head, and I can't build connections with people that can't intellectually receive me. If you're listening to this podcast and you're understanding what I'm saying, maybe you're the same. I need deep psychological connection for me to feel received. But if everything's based purely on the sexual, then obviously that doesn't matter. And that's why most people wouldn't, they would be shocked to hear what I've just said, because I'm wording it in a way that's able to explain it to you. And so there's a lot of subcategories in gay culture. Just getting back to the subject here is that a lot of gay culture is overcompensation for lack of love. So you may have heard of a famous book called The Velvet Rage, which was a very interesting take on gay culture and why why the gay man has to aspire to be perfect, to have the best clothes, to be the best dressed, to be successful, to idolize perfection in the mirror, to have the six pack, to have the square jaw, to look on the outside that everything is put well together as kind of like a thing that reaffirms itself back to itself. So how other people see it, it reaffirms it back to them. And that's why a lot of gays are very kind of like overachievers. They have to, it's kind of like making up for the lack of love. It's like, love me because I'm successful. Love me because I'm beautiful. I need you to love me. But this seeking of validation and seeking of attention is toxic. And of course, since things like fans only happened, or since, obviously we all live in the ether of the internet, all of this has completely gone in a very, very dark direction, because it's all based on quick, instant gratification. Okay, so it's not a good thing. Also, a lot of gay culture, like I mentioned in the part 1, is based on the behavior of gay men is based off not just pop culture, but also kind of like subcategories of divas like Mariah Carey or Madonna or Lady Gaga. It's based on this bitchy, very catty kind of way of thinking, and very much about kind of, it's like being insecure and then taking it out on everyone else. So it's like bagging people for their fashion choices, or hurting or shaming other people because they're fat or they're bigger, or kind of like, do you know what I mean? Like it's very catty, it's very bitchy, and a lot of it's kind of like based off that reality TV. I know like Paris Hilton, when she came out way back in the early 2000s, a lot of gay men kind of emulate that. They emulate Madonna, they emulate female idols, and it's like having a little dog in a handbag, or making sure that their brands, like back to the Velvet Rage thing. So it's like Gucci and Prada, and it's reaffirming to everyone that I have money. I'm of value because I have money. Everyone needs to look at me, or look at me with respect because I have money. But the problem is, you can't buy respect by money. You have to earn respect based on the quality and the goodness of your soul. You have to earn respect based on your deeds. Respect and love is not something that you can purchase. It's not something that you can buy externally. Okay, and that's why a lot of them are so hollow and empty, is because it's, like I've mentioned, it's inverted. Gay culture is an inversion. It's all based on the external world. It's not based on the heart. And that's why I'm doing these videos, because if there's someone out there that can hear what I'm saying, you're not alone. If you can see what I'm saying, you're not alone. Okay? So please don't think that you are alone, because there are people out there that are brave enough to make videos like this. All right? So what happens is, if the normalization of the dysfunctional behavior is the norm, if you come into the gay culture and you're around these gays and you don't comply and you don't fit in to their bitching, bullying, elitist kind of behavior, you'll be ostracized because you don't fit into their habits. Okay, so you won't be invited into their groups because they need you to be like them to reinforce the group mentality. Okay? I had a friend the other day who mentioned it's actually a little bit, gay culture is like the Real Housewives. It's like the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. It's like everything's fabulous, and that type of thing where they're all backstabbing. Let me get this straight. I want to make this really, really clear. You will not find more conniving, manipulative people than in the gay culture. Everyone is backstabbing each other. Everyone is manipulative. It's a learnt behavior. It's really kind of like as a young man coming into all of this shit, and now I'm 2 years off 40. 40 is approaching me pretty quick. I can tell you, it's really like high school. Gay culture is just like a bigger version of high school. And a lot of gay men emulate Regina George from Mean Girls. They emulate that type of elitist, catty, bullying bullshit. And so that's really what it is. They'll make up lies. A lot of them are liars. They're pathological liars. And of course, it goes without saying, if a man approaches you for sex and you don't have sex with them, or you don't, you're not interested, or they can't get something from you, gay culture is very much what you can do for me type of attitude. It's not what you can do for service of others. It's all a self-centered type of egotistical way of being. And so a lot of lies are made up with each other. If you refuse their sexual advances, then they'll call you a whore, or they'll make up a lie and say they had sex with you anyway. That's very, very common. Obviously, it goes without saying. It's also very incestuous as well, given that it is a minority. A lot of men have slept with their friends. A lot of friends have slept with their friends. A lot of boyfriends have slept with their friends' boyfriends. When they break up, they sleep with their boyfriend's friend. Like, it just goes on and on. Like, it's pretty obvious. So it's very common that, everyone's kind of had sex with each other, like, because that's really what it is. And that's also just a kind of a numbers game thing as well. So yeah, it's just hell. Like, it's just fucking hell. There's no other way to describe it. And it's why it's been nearly 9 years and I've been out of it. I haven't been out to a gay bar or a club in 9 years. And that's a lot of gay culture now is eroded because it's all gone into the internet and the apps, which I've mentioned before. I've also mentioned, I want to bring up that meth, crystal methamphetamine, is a huge part of gay culture now. And also just bringing up all of these things that I'm bringing up in the podcast is that even talking about this is like a sacred cow. It's like I'm not allowed to slay it. I'm not allowed to talk about it. I could offend someone. But what I'm doing this for is because I've just reached a level of comfortability and truth within myself that I'm just sharing my truth and my knowledge with you. All right? And it's not something that I'm making up here. I'm being honest. All right? So, and a lot of this is terrifying. And if I had a son that was gay, oh, whoa, Fuck, this is some scary shit. Also, in the defense of gay men, looking at it from the other side, and if you're listening, please understand this as well. It doesn't matter whether you're gay or straight, whatever you are. If you've never been shown love, how are you going to be able to give love to someone else? Okay? So a lot of this comes from the start. It comes from childhood. It comes from the family. If you weren't shown love, how are you going to give love to other people? You can't give something that you don't have. And that's what a lot of this all boils down to. And I'm going to do a video talking about that deeper a little bit at some point, but a lot of it all comes down to that. You know, it really does. And that's why a lot of them, they don't know how to love because they've never been shown it. They've got no clue. Everyone's fucking each other to try and get love, but fucking is not, having sex with someone is not love. So that goes without saying. I will top on it. Let's have a look at time. How are we going? Let's have a look. Where are we at? I'm at 30 minutes. 30 minutes. Okay, I'll do a bit more and then I'll get off for this part 2. Please know there is way more to say, and I will come back and unpack more as well. A big part of gay culture isn't just drug culture, it's also rape culture. Okay, a lot of rape culture is a huge part of gay culture, and it's become more and more prevalent as we have gone on. A lot of pornography is a huge part of gay culture. A lot of underground escorting, a lot of underground sensual massage, a lot of underground work is also a huge part of gay culture. And it's a part of how a lot of gay men have supported themselves and support themselves and continue to do so. So it's a lot of that going on, quintessentially. It's pretty crazy. A lot of pornography influences gay culture in the way that they treat each other, the way that they have sex with each other. And it's quite interesting. I remember it was, there's a porno company that was quite famous. It was called, I think they're still around. I think it's called Treasure Island Media, where it was pretty obvious that this man, you know, obviously meth is a huge part of gay sex, or drugs are anyway, being on acid trips or whatever. There was a young man that was drugged and basically he was gang raped. That was the scene. Sorry, I'm losing my voice a little bit, all this talking. So he was gang raped and it was pretty obvious in the scene that he was completely out of it. That actually went to court and contractually he couldn't go any further because he was contracted to have sex with people in a contract, which is interesting because prostitution and escorting is really technically illegal. But when it comes to the porn industry, something like having sex with multiple people while you're under the influence of drugs and you can't really consent stands up in court, which I've often found quite interesting and quite frightening as well. So a lot of gay men these days, it's not just about having a hookup. They can profit from this. It's become commercialized, so they can film themselves having sex with other people, using other people, hurting other people. A lot of BDSM comes into gay culture as well. A lot of things around consent in sex come up a lot around gay culture as well. It's just so damaging. And yeah, I mean, a lot of people ruin their lives very early. They get caught up in drug rings, in drug games, or they get caught up in porn. And God, it's crazy now because it was like 10 years ago, but back in 2012, between 2012 and 2016, there were mass amounts of gay suicides in the gay porn industry as well. And it was interesting because this type of stuff is never mentioned in mainstream society. And it got to a point where it started to trickle into mainstream society, and people started to talk about it, where it was like, hang on, we've got all of these men that are killing themselves. By the way, the suicide rates for gay men are huge. They always have been, particularly for gay men living in small towns, country towns kind of thing. Not just the ones that live in countries where it's illegal. But yeah, it's quite normal now that gays would film and then distribute it or put it on fans only. Also, like, the terminology that has changed around it as well is very disturbing. It's always dissociation when they talk, like referring to something like using words like I'm going to rape you, I'm going to break you. You know, you're like that type of thing, like not just calling someone a bitch, but calling them an it, like referring them to as a slave. A lot of slave culture, or dom and slave, and that type of master and slave type of thing has crept into the culture as well. But that's another video for another time. I will say a lot of part of the darker side of gay culture is a lot of internalized homophobia. So a lot of gay men that are closeted or bisexual, and they have sex with gay men, but they're not out. So they're living this kind of underground life in the culture. And since we've got apps now that have all popped up, there are more faceless profiles on these apps than ever before, which is really interesting to me, because here we are in 2023, and it's like, here we've got all this like pride, we've got all this acceptance and all this stuff, but yet we just see a mass amount of faceless profiles where people are not, they're hiding. That's quintessentially what they're doing. They're not showing the world who they are. They're hiding themselves for a reason. And so that's a real problem, because what happens is it normalizes the hiding of it. And so I've had a lot of problems, and it's led me to suicide on nearly 2 occasions, where a lot of married men that are married, they've got kids and a wife, and they have sex with men, or they use gay men for sex. So straight and bisexual men use gay men for sex, quintessentially, because there is a totem pole, like a hierarchy of social levels in society, and gays are low. They're low, right? So a lot of them use gay men for sex because gay men are the embodiment of the part of themselves that they're ashamed of, or in their own self-hatred, they hate that part of themselves because they won't own it or bring it up. So they'll use other people and then discard them and throw them away, because it can't go anywhere, because it's not in a place of truth. And they're not living an authentic life where they're living in their truth. So a lot of closeted or married gay men drag a lot of openly gay men back into the closet with them, into this kind of underground lifestyle where they're kind of invited back into this, going back into the closet with them again, which is very, very damaging to someone that is already living their truth. They've already come out and owned their truth. And now they're getting pulled back into this dynamic where they've got to hide. It's all underground, which is very bad. And it's really fucked up. So yeah, I hope that made sense. And that's something else that I will unpack in future videos as well. So maybe I think we'll leave it here. I don't want to over like, if you're probably listening to this and you've never heard it worded like this, this could potentially be a lot for a person that doesn't know about all this. So I'm just going to leave it here. Maybe we're just under the 40-minute mark. I hope that you're okay hearing this. I know it can be quite jarring and upsetting, but I'm just making you aware of all of the snares that will ensnare you, that are out there, this is real talk, okay? And I'm only doing this because it's the truth, and it's coming from my own experience, my own life. So I'm just articulating it in a way that's digestible. But please, please, please note, there are so many variables to everything that I'm saying, and I'm summarizing here. I'm not going into the rabbit holes yet, but I will be in future videos. So this was part 2, Gay Culture, The Road to Nowhere. I kind of I kind of think it's like the long road out of hell. But here we go. So I'll leave it here. Lots of love to you. I hope that you're enjoying the video. If you don't have the courage to leave a comment below, that's okay, and I understand. You can DM me if you want to. It's completely fine, okay? Wherever you're at on your journey, by the way, that's your personal journey, all right? And so maybe you are a closeted man listening to this, and maybe, but look, I'm just going to say at some point, it's very, very difficult to prolong something that isn't real. And it's very unfair of you if you are a closeted man and you've got a wife and kids, you know in your heart that you're gay, okay? It's really unfair to string a woman along, your wife along, and waste years of her life when you don't really want her, you don't really love her, you're not living in your truth, okay? There is nothing on this earth more crueler than a coward. And it takes courage and it takes authenticity to own your truth, all right? You must own your truth. And also it's really unfair is that you want to get to know other people, but you won't show them who you really are. So how can someone get to know you if you're not even showing them who you really are? Okay, so it can't last. But yeah, I'm going to get on with this in another part. Maybe we'll do a part 3 and we'll see how we go. So yeah, this was part 2 of gay culture, the long road to hell. Yeah, you're not alone. If you're out there and you're listening to me, you are not alone. There are people out there that see what is going on. They understand what's going on. I've come out of the indoctrination now, so I'm no longer indoctrinated into this shit. I've had an appropriate amount of life experience and time, which has enabled me to acquire this level of free thought where I can collectively talk about this in the way that I am right now. All right. So I'll leave it here and thank you so much for listening. I will see you in the next upload and I will, see you there. So please subscribe to my channel. Please share my videos with anyone that you think would benefit from them. Love and blessings to you. Bye. Bye.